were doxxed online, and with all what you just mentioned, and I received 17 voicemails at work. um, and I received some bad reviews on my business page.
Basically dox the parents and has this type of mentality towards anyone that does not support masks or basically the left-wing mob mentality.
Texas parents outraged after the co-chair of their school district's racial equity committee doxed them by posting their personal information like their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, and more online after they had sued the school district over its COVID-19 mask mandate. Let's bring in our parent panel to react. New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz, Moms for Liberty Keisha King, and the Fairfax County parent Asra Nomani. Thank you, all three of you, for joining me today. So I'm going to start with you, Keisha. It was interesting to me that this move of doxing the parents was obviously meant to intimidate them. And instead, the parents went on offense and outed the bully, right? The woman on the committee, on the equity committee, who tried to dox them. Is that the lesson for parents in this? Go on offense?
Absolutely. I think a lot of us are tired of being on defense, and we have to keep fighting for what we know is right. No matter how much they try to intimidate us, no matter how much they try to dox us or cancel us, we cannot let them win by silencing ourselves or being intimidated by them. We have to stand up for our children. And at the end of the day, that is all we're doing. We are just simply standing up for our children.
Yeah. You're not a domestic terrorist. You're a concerned parent. Carol, I'm really curious to ask you this question, because at the very beginning of the pandemic, so many parents were coming to you whispering that they were upset about the lockdowns, they were upset about the mask mandates, but they wouldn't go public. They were whispering it to you and hoping you might write about it and let the world know, let New York City know that they were upset about it. So do you think over the past, however many months it's been since this pandemic, almost 2 years now, do you think that shaming that these parents were afraid of, do you think it's losing its power, that parents are now more likely to step forward than they were, say, when you were getting those whispers?
I think that's absolutely true for some parents. I think as we're seeing across the country, parents are standing up. But I think stuff like this really does still make other parents afraid. They say, look what happened to this family in Texas, of all places. I'm going to get killed in New York City if I speak up. And I think the real key thing that parents need to realize here is you're never going to be quiet enough to not have this kind of attack happen to you. It didn't happen over critical race theory. It didn't happen over gender issues. It happened over masking. It could happen over anything. And I think parents need to know that they need to stand up to their school board. They need to speak up for their kids. And they really can't be quiet on some things, hoping to avoid, shaming or blame or this kind of thing. We need to stand together.
We need to stand together. I think that's so important. When somebody does step forward and the mob comes after them, it's really important that if you share that view, you really surround that person and support them, because it does can make you feel very alone and scared. Asra, I want to go to you. I've been obviously very encouraged by what you've done in Loudoun County, what so many other parents are doing. The Youngkin election was also, a sign that parents could make a difference and take back their schools. My question to you is that what we're seeing, so many of the problems in our schools are so systemic. Is the answer, it's great to take over the school board, but is the real answer in the legislature, in the state legislature, and going for school choice so that the money is attached to the child and not to these corrupt systems?
Oh, absolutely. We have to realize that we have a national pandemic of another sort going on through our school systems right now. And this Fort Worth example is a perfect one. This issue on the doxing was about masks, but in Fort Worth, they have had a huge debate about critical race theory also. There is a dad supporting critical race theory who said he had 1,000 soldiers to bring to oppose those parents who are challenging those ideas. And, along with what Keisha said about having an important to go on the offensive, and what Carol was saying about standing together, we have to investigate these school districts, and the state legislatures are really critical in this. As you know, in Texas, they've tried to ban critical race theory, but in fact, in Fort Worth, they have spent $1.3 million on an organization, Pacific Educational Group, that has had this book called Courageous Conversations brought to the school district. And you have to wonder, how does this kind of hate begin that allows for doxing of others just for a different point of view? And it's because in this book are the exercises that talk about separating people based on privilege, based on their skin color, teaching the idea that whiteness is a bad idea. And we have the receipts. These are the receipts. They show clearly that critical race theory has been taught, and the teaching goes from seminar after seminar, 5-year program, but guess what? Reading and math for 3rd graders is abysmal there in Fort Worth. Only 1 out of 3 students is at grade level. And that's the tragedy, and that's why
Absolutely.
we need parents to have more rights.
So I look at that, Azra, and any one of you can jump in on this question. I look at the work and the time that it took for you to FOIA and get these receipts and get this information and dig in. Isn't it just easier to, if you can afford it and there's a great private option or charter school, just to take your kids there? Because it seems like a full-time job to get to the bottom of all this stuff. I mean, a lot of it is starting, you know, in the teachers' colleges. How do you take that on?
I think we have to
I'll just
realize that, oh, I'm sorry. I think we have to realize
No,
that
go ahead.
they might have the mob, but we have the moms and the movement. And we will do what's best for our children. And if that means pulling them out, because you guys all know that I've called for a mass exodus, which is basically just exercising more school choice, do it. Because our children have to be prepared for the next levels of life. We cannot wait for the school board to get corrected, even though that's something that we have to do. But we need our children to be prepared, and they should not have to sit under this type of tyranny and have to be, you know, have their information sent out into the public, be doxxed, because the mob wants to go nuts. They might have the mob, but we have the movement.
That's right. Carol, really quickly, I agree with her that I don't have time for my kids to wait for the system to change.
Right. Yeah, no, that's it. If you can get your kids out, I think we do need to abandon failed systems. I do feel very strongly that we can't really, you know, leave parents behind. So as you take your kids out of the system, you must agitate for school choice. You must agitate for school vouchers. If you're lucky enough to be able to have an option for your children to put them in private school or a charter school, push for those same options for people who don't have the resources that you have. I think that's so important. I saw in New York City last year where parents just pulled kids and put them in schools where schools were open and left their public school, you know, brethren behind in closed schools. I think that's really wrong if you don't push for school choice and you have the option of that choice yourself.
Well, Kara, Azra, Keisha, in a country that is in need of more heroes, there's 3 of them right there on your screen. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Have courage, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, by the way.